The Philadelphia Eagles made a pair of roster moves that may not be grabbing national headlines, but for anyone paying close attention to how this team is being built for another championship run, these developments could become much more important than they appear at first glance. The biggest move involves the signing of veteran defensive lineman A.J. Epinesa, a former second-round pick who has quietly put together a productive NFL career. While many fans may have been focused on mandatory minicamp wrapping up and the long wait until training camp begins, Howie Roseman continued working behind the scenes to strengthen the roster. Epinesa arrives in Philadelphia after spending his entire career with the Buffalo Bills. Selected in the second round of the 2020 NFL Draft out of Iowa, he entered the league with significant expectations and has largely delivered steady production throughout his time in Buffalo. What stands out immediately is the consistency he showed from 2022 through 2024, recording 6.5 sacks, 6.5 sacks, and 6 sacks during that stretch. That level of production is not easy to find in the middle of June, especially from a player who still has plenty left to offer. Although his 2025 season was less productive, finishing with only 2 sacks, the Eagles clearly believe there is still value in his skill set. What makes this signing particularly interesting is the context surrounding it. Earlier this offseason, Epinesa had signed with the Cleveland Browns. However, that deal ultimately fell apart because of concerns regarding his knee and a failed physical. Different organizations often have different medical evaluations, and the Eagles' medical staff obviously felt comfortable enough with his condition to give him an opportunity. That decision alone tells you something. Philadelphia is not simply handing out contracts to fill camp bodies. Every roster spot matters, especially for a team with championship aspirations. The Eagles clearly see a player who can compete for a meaningful role. Looking deeper into his career, numbers helps explain why. Since entering the NFL in 2020, Epinesa has accumulated 24 sacks, 29 tackles for loss, 53 quarterback hits, and 21 pass breakups. For an edge defender, those pass breakup numbers are particularly impressive. He has demonstrated a unique ability to affect passing lanes, disrupt quarterbacks, and create chaos near the line of scrimmage. Over the last 3 seasons alone, he recorded 14 pass breakups and 4 interceptions. Those are not normal statistics for a defensive end. At approximately 260 pounds with long arms and a powerful frame, Epinesa brings a style of play that fits what defensive coordinator Vic Fangio values. He can set the edge against the run, hold up physically at the point of attack, and generate pressure as part of a rotation. The versatility may be the most intriguing part. Because of his size and strength, Epinesa is capable of lining up both on the edge and inside along the defensive line. Eagles fans watched Brandon Graham fill that type of hybrid role in recent years, moving around the formation and creating favorable matchups. Epinesa potentially offers some of that same flexibility, and that raises an important question about the Eagles' long-term plans. Could this signing signal that Philadelphia is preparing for a different approach regarding veteran depth along the defensive front? The possibility cannot be ignored. The current edge rusher room already features several players expected to make the roster, but depth remains crucial over the course of a long season. Injuries happen, rotations matter. Fresh pass rushers often determine the outcome of games in December and January. That is why this signing feels more significant than a typical June transaction. Epinesa is not arriving as a developmental prospect. He is not a player hoping to surprise people after years away from meaningful football. He is a proven NFL contributor with multiple productive seasons on his resume. The Eagles are essentially buying low on a player who has already shown he can consistently affect games. Even if he never becomes a starter, his ability to contribute in rotational packages could prove extremely valuable. Philadelphia has built much of its success through defensive line depth, and adding another experienced body who can rush the passer, defend the run, and create turnovers fits perfectly with that philosophy. As training camp approaches, fans will naturally focus on the headline names. They will watch the stars. They will track the young players and the major position battles. But sometimes the moves that matter most are the ones that happen quietly. A.J. Epinesa could very well be one of those moves. The Eagles saw enough to bring him into the building despite concerns elsewhere. They saw enough production to believe he can help. They saw enough versatility to envision a role within Fangio's defense. And if he performs the way he did during his best years in Buffalo, Philadelphia may have added a surprisingly important piece to an already talented defensive front. Do you think A.J. Epinesa has a legitimate chance to earn a significant role in the Eagles' defense this season? Or do you see him primarily primarily as a depth addition behind the established pass rushers. The Eagles were not finished making moves, and the second edition may reveal even more about what this coaching staff is trying to accomplish offensively heading into training camp. Philadelphia also signed veteran offensive lineman Michael Jordan to a one-year contract, and while the name immediately grabs attention for obvious reasons, this move is about far more than recognition. It is about experience, familiarity, and perhaps most importantly, understanding a new offensive system that is beginning to take shape inside the NovaCare complex. Jordan entered the NFL as a fourth-round pick by the Cincinnati Bengals in 2019 after a successful career at Ohio State. Since then, he has accumulated 78 career appearances and 49 starts across multiple organizations. That kind of experience has value, especially for a team looking to strengthen its depth along the offensive line. What makes this signing particularly noteworthy is the connection Jordan has with members of the Eagles coaching staff. Last season with Tampa Bay, Jordan played under Josh Grizzard, who is now part of Philadelphia's offensive coaching staff. During that season, Jordan started 9 games and logged over 700 offensive snaps. That means he already has experience operating within concepts and techniques that are now making their way into the Eagles' offensive structure. This is where things become especially interesting. Throughout organized team activities and mandatory minicamp, there have been growing signs that Philadelphia's offense is evolving. Coaches are implementing different concepts, emphasizing different responsibilities, and introducing techniques that offensive linemen have openly acknowledged are not identical to what they were doing previously. That transition process can take time. For veteran players, changing blocking techniques is not as simple as flipping a switch. Muscle memory matters, communication matters, understanding the finer details of a scheme matters. Michael Jordan already has exposure to many of those details. As a result, his value extends beyond simply competing for a roster spot. He becomes another player capable of helping bridge the gap between what the Eagles used to do and what they are trying to do now. When evaluating this move, it is impossible to ignore the importance of offensive line depth. The Eagles have one of the most talented starting offensive lines in football when healthy. However, depth questions naturally arise every offseason. Injuries happen, players miss time, young prospects need development. That is why Philadelphia continues investing resources into building layers of protection behind its starters. The coaching staff has also made it clear that versatility is becoming a major priority. Offensive linemen are being asked to learn multiple positions rather than focusing exclusively on one spot. The goal is obvious: create flexibility if injuries occurred during the season. The second-team offensive line has featured numerous young players rotating through different assignments. Development remains a major focus. Several recent draft picks are expected to play important roles in the future, but the Eagles do not want to rely entirely on unproven talent if injuries strike. That is where Jordan enters the picture. His experience gives Philadelphia another option. His familiarity with coaching concepts gives him an advantage. His versatility could make him a valuable insurance policy as roster battles intensify later this summer. Meanwhile, the Eagles also made corresponding roster moves to create room for their new additions. Linebackers Chandler Martin and Isaiah King were released as part of the process. Those moves are often overlooked, but they demonstrate the constant competition taking place across the roster. Every new signing creates pressure elsewhere, and every roster spot must be earned. There was another notable development involving veteran linebacker DeVonta Smith. After spending time with Philadelphia and later stepping away from football, Smith was released from the reserve retired list. That move gives him the opportunity to pursue another NFL opportunity should he decide to continue his career. Taken together, these transactions paint a very clear picture of how the Eagles are approaching the period between minicamp and training camp. They are not standing still. While many teams simply wait for camp to arrive, Howie Roseman continues searching for value. Whether it is adding a productive pass rusher like AJ Epineza or bringing in an experienced offensive lineman who understands elements of the evolving offensive scheme, the front office remains aggressive in strengthening every corner of the roster. That approach has become one of the defining characteristics of this organization. The Eagles understand that championships are not won solely because of star players. Championships are won because depth survives injuries. Championships are won because quality veterans step into larger roles when needed. Championships are won because roster weaknesses are addressed before they become major problems. These latest moves may not dominate national sports shows, but inside Philadelphia, they could have meaningful implications once training camp begins. The competition at edge rusher just became more intense. The battle for offensive line depth just became more interesting. And the coaching staff now has additional pieces that fit the direction they are trying to take this football team. With training camp now on the horizon, Eagles fans should pay very close attention to how A.J. Epinesa and Michael Jordan perform once the pads come on. Both players arrive with experience, both have legitimate opportunities, and both could end up becoming important contributors during the 2026 season. One of the most revealing aspects of these roster moves is what they tell us about the Eagles' overall philosophy entering the next phase of the offseason. With mandatory minicamp now complete, there will be a long stretch before players return for training camp. For many organizations, this period is relatively quiet. For Philadelphia, however, it remains a critical evaluation period. The front office is clearly examining every position group and identifying areas where competition can be improved. At edge rusher, the addition of A.J. Epinesa creates another battle that will be worth monitoring. The Eagles already have established players expected to occupy key roles, but adding a veteran with proven production increases the pressure throughout the room. Competition often brings out the best in players, and Philadelphia has consistently relied on deep defensive line rotations to maintain effectiveness throughout a season. Epinesa's ability to contribute against both the run and the pass gives the coaching staff additional flexibility when constructing defensive packages. His history of batting down passes and creating turnovers adds another dimension that could make him particularly valuable in specific situations. On the offensive side, Michael Jordan's arrival reinforces the importance of experience within a changing system. Several young offensive linemen are currently developing behind the starters, and the organization clearly believes in their long-term potential. However, development is rarely a straight line. There are always challenges, adjustments, and learning curves. Adding a veteran who has nearly 50 career starts provides stability. It also gives the coaching staff another player familiar with concepts connected to the offensive changes being implemented. As training camp begins and competition intensifies, that familiarity could become increasingly valuable. Another theme that emerged throughout the offseason program was positional flexibility. Coaches want players capable of handling multiple responsibilities. The more positions a player can play, the more valuable he becomes on game day. That philosophy is evident throughout the offensive line depth chart. Multiple players are being cross-trained, learning different spots across the line, and preparing themselves for